Guillaume Singelin's art first appeared to me within Jump Over the Ages' Citizen Sleeper, where his charming, detailed, and distinct character art brought texture to Citizen Sleeper's story and themes. Striking characters who amplified the game's atmosphere of space, and warm faces that foster a soft sense of community in a cold world. So when I learned that Singelin had his very own science fiction comic on the heels of my excitement for the second Citizen Sleeper game of the year for me, 2025 by the way, I jumped at the chance to see what kind of sci-fi world he would make while in the driver's seat, and that resulted in today's book, Frontier. What immediately jumps out to me about Frontier aesthetically is the shift in proportions to these squashed, not quite chibi humans that stand out compared to not only Sangelin's work on Citizen Sleeper, but also within his other comics work like PTSD or Shin Zero. Big, squishy looking heads, but with bodies and limbs that are tiny yet proportional to the rest of it. Simultaneously cute and small without veering into full-blown caricatures of humans. It is an odd balance to try and strike, and yet it works because these characters do end up in rather grave situations, and it does manage to tip in favor of us taking these characters seriously. What I'm saying is that despite the service level cuteness of the characters, it doesn't end up having a happy tree friends or robot chicken self aware cartoon parody effect whenever blood is shed, because they command too much respect. Instead, these proportions end up blending themselves perfectly to hammering home the spaces we explore over the book. The grandness of vast nature-filled planets are only that much grander when their mountains and mines are paired with these tiny bodies. While on cramped space stations designed by exploitative corporations with maximum usage of space in mind, the small bodies aim to amplify the feeling of being trapped. If bodies this small-looking feel cramped, the reader begins to wonder how tight these spaces truly are. Not to mention, these are also just very rich worlds, huge expanses of lithium fields exploring the exploitation of planetary resources, cramped hospital rooms with no roofs lending any privacy, personal workplaces crammed with little details that color in our characters, who in turn inform a handful of perspectives on these spaces. So let's talk about our three primary POV characters: Jisoo, Kamina, and Alex. Jisoo is an Earth-born scientist exploring the possibilities of space for the love of the game, who becomes dejected yet enraged by corporate interference in her work, leading in turn to her own interfering with company interests, landing her away from her home planet and into a space workstation. Alex, on the other hand, is a spaceborne average, low in the hierarchy worker who only knows the life of man-made space stations, living in the life of routine, following along with the work he believes he must do. These two end up contrasting and complementing each other over the course of the story, as they face their opposing ideologies about life head-on. Jisoo carries beliefs from being born on a planet, that it makes the space that occupies a planet her home, and one a person must someday return to. A view that space, despite its wonder and mystery and her interest in it, is still transitory force at the end of the day. This view of space brushes up against Alex's lived experience of being born in space, and having no soil to return to the way someone from a planet would, as Jisoo feels she does. This is explored in one of the best scenes in the book, which also functions as these two's first meeting. A short 4 pages spent in a small break room for smoking, one that contains only a bench, an ashtray, a vending machine of cigarettes and lighters, and one window that shows a view of space. We can glean from the room's size and the fact Jisoo prior to this scene is met with a resounding, what? When asking about a smoking area, that in the grand scheme of things, this is a relatively unimportant utilitarian space used by workers for short breaks before getting on with their workday. And this is the exact purpose Jisoo is using it for. Alex is instead here because the small view allotted in the smoke room is one of the only places on the ship that gives a good view of the funeral ejection chamber, and is here to pay his respect to two co-worker friends. This heavy news obviously stirs Jisoo, causing her to bumble her way through her implicit biases of viewing this return of spaceborne humans back to space as barbaric. Despite how, in Alex's own words, we come from stardust, it's normal to go back to where we came from, making it clear that this is no different from burying a corpse in soil or water or spreading ashes through the air. And so Jisoo ceases smoking and sticks her cigarette upright into the ashtray, recreating the visual of Korean funeral rite incense. And this casual space used for indulging in vices becomes somewhat spiritual to both Jisoo and Alex, as they pay their respects to the spaceborne dead. It is a core scene in this book that really displays what stands out about this book to me: the grand stage of space not used for an operatic sci-fi saga, but for a smaller story focusing on the simpler clashes that come from a setting like this. The cultural divide that forms from the aesthetic difference and the circumstances being more like looking at the same life from different sides of the glass. The soil and the stardust providing the same meaning to the two. But there isn't only the cultural differences in their lives. Just as Jisoo spends time in space over the course of the book, Alex spends time on land, and despite the beauties they are able to find in each, there ends up being a physical strain to this, an inherent incompatibility their bodies have to the opposing way of life. The fish cannot live out of water, something that is used as a direct parallel as Alex submerges in water for the first time landing on the planet Minerva and begins to feel at home with the lack of gravity. It lightly asks the reader to wonder if expanding this far beyond the place humans call home has created a divide too strong to bend. Despite the beauties to be seen, these two friends cannot coexist physically in the way they long to. It's tragic, but interesting, and that is also where the aforementioned third character comes into play. Kamina is an ex-mercenary freshly out of work after a job cost her an arm, and begins using this as a way to find a new place in life. Initially meeting Jisoo and Alex saving their lives, she ends up being a bit of a bridge between the two lives as the physical toll begins separating the two from one another. See, Kamina's life as a merc has made hers one of perpetual motion, constant to and fro from job to job, from space to land, allowing her to meet Jisoo and Alex before they live, seemingly without the physical consequence they have, and bridging the gap between the two as she places herself within their friendship. Jisoo eventually finds the place best for her on planet Juno, while Alex finds a place and family on a communal space station lifted from corporate control. Separated, but happy in life for the first time in a long time. Kamina, on the other hand, finds new work clearing space debris, rapidly decreasing the ease in which people can travel from space to land safely, maintaining that bridge between Jisoo and Alex, and being the force that could one day drive them together again. I really love the way this book ends up displaying the harmonious balance between not only the lives that we all individually find joy in, but also the ways we can cross the bridges into each other's lives and find beauty there as well, even if ultimately they are not the lives we want to or can lead ourselves. Each time our characters find themselves settling into a new space, Singelin gives us these montages of adaptation, 2-page dialogue with sprawls of panels that break up the different unstated acts of the story, and show the new joys to be found in a setting, the routines settling in, the struggles to adhere to the new life. And these end up being some of the most potent emphasis on the overarching themes of life in this book, as they showcase the nuances of growing across different parts of your life. It all makes Frontier feel so lived in and lingered on in the mind of Singelin. It's worth noting how the physical edition of this book does wonders for the art by being so damn tall. Seriously, my softcover edition is even taller than some of my big fancy hardcovers, and it is so worth it because even the smallest panels here are blown up to see all the beautiful details. Every planet's surface is filled with detailed vistas littered with small towns or ships or mountain ranges, while every interior has wires you can trace along the panel connecting all the technology. It is a genuinely breathtaking book to pore over. My first time through it took me like a month to get through all 200-ish pages because it's really just the kind of book you can get lost in. So shout out to this book displaying Singelin's art with the perfect dimensions. But while talking about the physical edition, there's a meta aspect after the story is over to the themes of finding your place through the different stages of life. Singelin gives us this big dump of sketches and different iterations of this book going through different stages for the better part of a decade. As project titles change and the plot shifts from concept to concept, eventually landing in the story about the journey itself, you get to see tons of different directions distilled into different parts of the finished product. The space pirate idea informing Kamina's backstory segments, the story idea titled Green being folded into recaptured space station Alex ends up in. All these different ideas end up shaping Frontier as we know it now. It honestly helps remind me when I get stuck in art or life that the only way out is through, and to embrace the changes in my life that I can't help or that are needed to progress. The same way Jisoo and Alex free themselves from their unhappy lives, to allow the changes of life to shape the art, and for the art to shape my life in turn. We can make the best of the twists and ideas we get using them for the better, and I'm really thankful to this story for that reminder, and it feels like the biggest takeaway I got from Frontier in writing this. And so, for now, that is what I'm going to leave you with. Consider checking out Frontier and Singelin's other works as well. Till next time. Hello, Editing Lila here. Thank you for watching this video this far. If you did, hello. If you're not here, you're not here. That's amazing. Anyway, I made this when as a bit of a side project to my big project, which will be the next video, which is probably the most ambitious thing that I've done so far, at least in terms of scope and length. Just because it naturally called to me as a subject. I made this because I was really deep in the reading minds, and I wanted to make something else in the midst of it. And so this is the result of that. I had tried a couple like new things, and that was fun. Some stuff worked, some stuff didn't. But thank you, regardless. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, hi, I'm Lila of Comics. I make videos about comics, whatever kinds that I want to talk about. So yeah, thank you. And then I would like to shout out my patrons, of which there are 4 now. Thank you. Pixie Melon, Marnie, JG Piff, and Devil Mom. Thank you for subscribing to my Patreon. Speaking of the Patreon, there is currently a rambly bonus video of a certain kind of thingy that I'm trying about the new Vertigo books, my first impressions on the new Vertigo books, and less scripted and fully involved video processes and whatnot. So you can find that over there. So thank you. See you next time. Bye.